Hello and welcome to Center for Victory's podcast of Your Best Day Yet. At Center for Victory, we're here to unlock, reinforce, and enrich relationships through personal and professional development. I'm Eric Guy, Chief Victory Officer here at the Center for Victory. My guest today is the one, the only Doug Smith from L3 Leadership. Welcome aboard, Doug. Great to have you today.
Hey.
Looking forward to our discussion.
Likewise, Eric. Thanks for having me. It's always an honor to connect with you.
Yeah, so this month, Doug, as you know, we've been talking about leadership and leadership in the new year. You've got a little bent on it. We've got some great questions here. We're going to just dive in. Before we do that, can you just give us a little bit of your background, especially like your leadership background as we talk about leadership this month?
Yeah, so I have been on staff at Light of Life Rescue Mission, which is a nonprofit on the north side of Pittsburgh. I've been on staff there for around 9 years, and I'm the director of development there. I oversee an $8 million budget, and we are in the middle of a $20 million capital campaign. And I've been in that role for a year and a half now, so that's been a fun leadership journey and a lot of growth, a lot of lessons learned. And I am also the founder of a leadership development organization called L3 Leadership. We have a podcast, we have a one-day leadership conference, Mastermind Groups, and a lot more. And so those are the two things I'm very, very passionate about, and that's what I do.
Okay. Well, good. Well, we're going to jump in. This is a little bit different bent on leadership, but we're going to start out with, creating a life plan. I mean, I really believe this, but practically speaking, when we say create a life plan, what does that mean to you, and how do you see that coming out in your own leadership and leadership with others?
Yeah, so creating a life plan, I actually originally got this concept from a man named Michael Hyatt. He actually wrote a book that I highly recommend if you're unfamiliar with this concept called Living Forward. Again, it's by Michael Hyatt and Daniel Harkavy. And the book's a little bit fluffy, but the process they give you for creating a life plan is excellent. And so really what it is you take time once a year and you get away and you take every bucket of your life, whether that's financial, relationships, marriage, career, finances, physical health, and you take each of those buckets and say, okay, at the end of my life, what do I want to be able to say about that category of life to make sure that I actually lived well in that area? And so it may sound like a morbid exercise, but I actually encourage you maybe go to a cemetery to do some reflection time, or just get away at a cabin and just really spending time thinking the end through. And then you can basically backtrack and say, okay, if at the end of my marriage, at the end of my life, I want to be able to say that I was married for 50 plus years and had a great family, and my wife loves me more today than she did the day we got married. What do I need to do from this day forward to make sure that that happens? And then every year you review it. And why I think this is so important for leaders, and what this has to do with leadership, is now more than ever, I believe you really can't separate your personal life from your leadership. It's one and the same. And so many people just think about leadership in the workspace and they don't lead themselves at home. And if you don't start with self-leadership, if you don't start leading yourself and living intentionally yourself, I'll put it this way: if you wouldn't follow yourself, why should anyone else?
Right.
And so a life plan enables you to have a foundation to build a strong life on and become a leader worth following.
Thank you. That's good stuff, man. I really believe that. We talked a lot about that last month when we talked about vision. And, Zach and I did a couple podcasts on that. We had a couple people in. So it's definitely something, and I believe that you can't. I mean, you have to do that. But the other thing that I would add to here, Doug, and I don't know if you have any other thoughts on this, but doing that with your leaders, I believe keeps them more engaged, because you're not just invested in their professional development, you're also invested in their personal development.
Yeah, we try to have everyone in my mastermind group. Everyone has done this, create a life plan, and a lot of them actually brought their spouses in on the process and did it with their spouse. And then we all came back and kind of shared what was our life plan. And it was a game changer for the men in my group.
Okay. So how do you determine your personal growth plan? Like, what are some tools to equip you to help you achieve those goals?
Yeah, when I think through personal growth plans, it's the end of the year, which is always my favorite week. And I actually have a process. Now, this requires some pre-work, but every year at the end of the year, I take the last week, and I usually spend about a day, maybe a day and a half, reflecting on my year. And I actually do what I call a year-end review process. And so I take my calendar, I take my photos, I take my journals, and pretty much anything else I can think of that'll help me reflect on my year. And I just go through all of that. And I'm kind of nerdy. I have a report, and I actually have a template I can send to you and your listeners. But I have all these different categories of what I track, and I track lessons learned, things I need to work on, etc. And so for me, I enter each year creating a personal growth plan based on what I learned in my year-end review. And so I'm about to dive into that process here at the end of the week. But once I determine the 3 or 4 areas that I want to grow in, I start to ask myself, what resources could I get in this area that could help me grow, whether that's books, podcasts, etc. 2 is just what people can I meet. Maybe there's an area that I know someone's great at and I'm not so great at, and I ask them to mentor me and walk me through that process. Um, 3, and again, I'm a person of faith. I believe just spending time with God daily. I had a mentor tell me once that, Doug, let God be the architect of your growth. And I think just submitting those things that you want to grow into God and walking with him daily will help you grow as well. So those are some of the things that I do to create my plan each year.
Good. Okay. A mastermind groups, I'm definitely a big proponent of that. Have been involved with one for the past decade. Have been involved with L3. How have you seen the trajectory of your life and leadership with those?
Yeah, so I've been intentional about my growth for the past 17 years, and nothing has enabled me to grow more than being in a mastermind group. I'm entering my 6th year being in a mastermind group, in the same group. I actually thought when I started them, and if you're unfamiliar, mastermind groups are just intentional groups that gather on a consistent basis to help each other, challenge each other, encourage each other, and help each other reach their goals. And what I thought was, hey, I'll just be in a different group every year, and all of those leaders will start their own group. But what I found is, most people, and I can't encourage leaders enough, you just need a group of people to do life with on a consistent basis, and not just for a month, not just for a year. I'm talking years and years and years. I think about my mastermind group. They've certainly helped me grow professionally, but they've also helped me grow a ton personally, and they walk me through life and tough issues. And so again, I think it's just when you put yourself in a mastermind group, you're exposing yourself to all those other men or women's contacts, all of their skills, all their network, etc. And literally you'd be shocked at how far you can go with that expertise.
Good. How have you handled failure personally in your life?
I would say overall, I don't always handle it well at first. Unfortunately, I used to define my worth by my failure, and it would cause me to shut down. And so, what I've had to learn to do recently, over the last 5 to 10 years, is separate the failure from my identity. The reality is, I'm not my failure. A failure is an event, and the question isn't, did I fail? The question is, what am I going to do with that failure? And so, as bad as failure stings for me, I'm learning that it's the fastest way to learn. And so I've been challenging myself. How can I fail more and fail faster so I can learn more and go further? And so for me, it's just owning the failure and saying, hey, you know what? I failed. It's a total failure. I own it. I don't make excuses. But hey, here's what I could do better next time. And I just reflect on it. So for me, that's probably been the biggest process handling failure.
Mm-hmm. Last question. Any advice you would give leaders wanting to develop their leadership?
Yeah, I would just say always be leading something. I got that advice when I was in my early 20s. And my question is, what are you leading? And, maybe you don't have a leadership role at work. Well, could you lead an outside organization? Could you start something on your own? Could you volunteer at a group? Because the reality is, if you want to grow your leadership, you can't grow your leadership if you're not leading. You can read leadership books, you can listen to leadership podcasts, but until you're actually in the arena, you're going to have trouble growing. And so do everything you can to gain leadership experience. And if you don't have leadership opportunities at work, maybe talk to your boss, maybe talk to your supervisor, and let them know that that's something that you desire. And then ask them what they think of that. They might give you feedback. You may not have leadership responsibilities, either one, because they didn't know you did and didn't know that ambition was in you. And so that might create an opportunity. Or two, there's some lids or some things holding you back from being given the opportunity to lead. And until you know that, you can't work on that. And so if they're saying, we don't think you're ready for leadership yet, that creates a great opportunity to say, that's great. What can I do to grow my leadership or get into a position where I can be in leadership? And that's where you have to have humility and just be willing to receive whatever they tell you. And then goes back to personal growth. That becomes your number one priority the next year for personal growth. And so always be leading something. And just with that, on the personal growth side, I always tell people work harder on your character than you do on your competency. No one tells people that, but character development really is the most important development. And if you don't develop your character, it may not bite you today or tomorrow, but I'm telling you, somewhere down the line, it's going to hold you back or totally get you off track of your leadership journey. So develop your character.
Yeah, I think just again a little bit to my point with that first question that I asked you. I think if you're going to be a leader and develop even leaders underneath you, the best way to keep them engaged is to start developing their leadership early on.
Yeah.
And give them some of the things obviously that you talked about. So that's a good way to increase engagement even inside of a company. As we wrap up, Doug, if you could sum this up and give us a little prescription, like 2, 3, maybe 4 tips, and I've got some nuggets there out of you, but I want to hear it from the horse's mouth here. Real quick, bullet points. What should we do if we're looking to develop ourselves as leaders inside of our companies, homes, communities?
Yep. Here's your checklist of action steps. Number 1, it's the end of the year, so do a year-end review. Reflect on 2019 and plan for 2020. If you haven't read Living Forward by Michael Hyatt, buy it now and determine to get away for a day retreat and do a life plan. And then out of that life plan, create a personal growth plan for 2020. Jump in a mastermind group, whether it's Vistage, L3 Leadership, etc. Get in a group of leaders that will support you on a consistent basis. Deal with failure well. You're going to fail this year. You are not your failure. Learn from it and get better. And just develop your character. Go get them.
Okay, that's the one I was waiting for. I knew it. Let's throw that in. That was a really good piece of advice. I'll leave you with this quote. It's from one of your favorites, Doug, John Maxwell. People don't buy in. People buy into the leader before they buy into the vision. So being a great leader and developing those skills, we really appreciate you on the show today. Hopefully that we can have you back for February when we're talking about really the heart of leadership. Would love to have you back for that as well, because you always have good tidbits for us and for our viewers and listeners. But that's all for today, folks. Thank you for watching and listening. Make sure you leave this video a like and leave a comment down in the comment section. We'd also appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button as well as the bell icon to get notified when we post next. If you'd like more information, you could always visit us at centerforvictory.com. And just remember, wherever you're at, wherever you're going, make this your best day yet. We'll see you later.